Hey guys, welcome back for another video. Actually, the first live stream here on Theater Insights. Not my first live stream, but the first for this particular channel. And I am joined tonight by Mr. Rick Henthorne of Indy Audio Labs. They have the brands ACURUS and ARAGON, which you guys are going to be a lot more familiar with. And we have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about tonight. If you are joining us live, please go ahead and jump in the chat. I'm going to be managing all the questions. Throw any you have out for either Rick or myself. Rick, first of all, thank you very much for joining me tonight. My pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I met Rick for the first time in person just a few weeks ago when I was at the New York audio show doing a little bit of video work for the ARAGON guys. And he came in and did some work for the room and their equipment and that kind of stuff. So we'd been, doing video calls and email and text and stuff before that. But it was a real pleasure, first of all, to meet you in person. I think, we vibed a little bit. And it was nice just to, put a face to the feeling. So that was very cool. And I've got a couple funny stories about that involving what I see you're drinking there tonight.
Yeah,
he knows. So that's my background with you. And as far as my background with the company, I actually don't know a lot about the ARAGON side and the Indy Audio Labs especially side. I just have some of your guys' ACURUS equipment here, and that's the extent of my knowledge about, that side of it. So let's just first start off for anybody brand new and like me, a little new to how everything's wrapped up. Tell us how Indy Audio Labs fits into the different brands and your specific roles in the various organizations.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm the Global Director of Sales, and Indy Audio Labs is the parent company of ACURUS and ARAGON. Now, 30 years ago, ARAGON was the first company under Mondial, and both lines were complete lines. So ACURUS is kind of a play on Accurate in the USA.
Oh, okay.
And it was not really, two-channel and home theater like it is today. They were both complete lines. There was, an ARAGON stereo amp, there was an ACURUS stereo amp, so on and so forth.
Oh, okay.
The way it's kind of working today is with ACURUS, we have two processors, the AC4 and the Muse, and then we have two amplifiers, the M8X and M4X.
Oh, so you're still going to be selling the regular 8, or are you just using up stock?
No, it's just the X now. The X has replaced the regular M8 and M4.
That's what I thought. Okay.
It's a simple lineup. And with ARAGON, we have the tungsten preamp, which is an excellent preamp and DAC. That's what we were using at the New York show.
That sounds so nice.
And it's cool because, it sounds great. And it has a lot of features that are actually useful for a room. Like I'm in a small office right now, and if I want to make something work in here, I might need some filters for room correction, and that unit has all that stuff. And then we have two amps. We have our Iridium monoblock and our titanium stereo amp. We were using a pair of the Iridiums at that show.
Oh, I didn't know you had two different amps.
Both, high bias Class AB designs, extreme fast slew rate, giant capacitors in the power supply. I've got one. It's the size of a Coke or a beer can, depending on what your drink of choice is.
Do not touch that.
Yeah. Don't do the 9-volt battery test on it.
That takes me back to car audio days.
Right. So those things are huge. They're just really robust, really well built products, and they're not cheap, but if you compare them to other things at the same price, they are high value at their price points.
I would actually argue, given the others in the market with the same kind of specs, that they are inexpensive. I mean, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I mean,
good
relative, so they could be, but I'm not quite at that place, where I'm like, okay, that's cheap. It's not, but it's high value for what it is.
Yes, high value. That's a better word. I didn't want to say
punches
cheap.
above its price weight class.
It's stellar performance, at least to my ears.
Right. And that's the thing is that we, with both brands, we try and strive to make our electronics sound good on like every speaker out there. Our voicing is neutral. It's not a product that's like, well, it's great if you have brand X. You can kind of put it in any situation and it's going to shine. It plays nice with everybody. It's a good all-around performer.
So are the two brands still going after the same kind of customer, or is it more branching into multi-channel and two-channel?
So right now it's kind of multi-channel and two-channel. I'm not going to say at some point in the line they will both have a complete lineup, because that's possible. That's kind of how it was back in the day. They were both a full stereo lineup, and ACURUS had some home theater things. But I will tell you, a lot of our dealers and distributors, they mix things up. For example, the largest theater jobs are often using Iridium monoblocks on the left, center, right, a pair of M8s bridged, and an ACK4. So it's really one company providing kind of the best solution for every piece of that puzzle. Now, we had somebody in China do a theater with 9 titanium stereo amps. That's 18 channels of ARAGON amplification through 9 of those amps. That was the whole, a whole entire rack of them just stacked up. It was really neat looking. I think the picture's still on our website.
I don't want that power bill.
Well, I don't know about that. They each probably pull about 2 amps standby current. So I guess if you left it on all the time, but great sound system, elegant, just if you can do it, it's a wonderful way to go.
I can imagine. So you have obviously, well, maybe not obviously, years and years of industry experience, but
right.
I don't think you've always been the corporate sales guy. So how did you get started?
I've started. So my context here comes from, I actually sold this product as a dealer.
Oh.
Now I did pretty well with it. I was doing about a processor a week. Now there was a couple months where it might have been 3 processors a month, but it's like I could get, one customer, they would hear it, they would get hooked, because it's an experience-based sale.
Yes.
Right? Like if my integrators have one hooked up, they have a demo room, and people hear it, they'll go for it. The sound is, when you experience it, it's like, okay, there's something different, right?
It is.
That's anything. It doesn't matter if we're talking about like XYZ speaker. This whole industry is really an experience-based sale. There's very few things you just whip open your computer and you see a website and you're like, oh, I've got to have that because the specs are awesome. You really got to sit down and listen to it. And so I was really moving the product pretty well. I had kind of tapered down the lines I was selling so that ACURUS and ARAGON were the mainstays. And I won't go into all the details, but now I'm the company man, right? So
gotcha.
I kind of, I've talked to dealers, and it's like when they bring on the product and they're able to demo it, it'll go from a guy saying, hey, where's the local dealer? They send an email, they go to the store, before you know it, they've got a pair of monoblocks. Like I said, it's really an experience-based sale,
So something that really piqued my interest when we were talking at the show was your experience with actual design work or consulting for projects.
Right. I've done a lot of that. I've done a lot of loudspeaker.
I wasn't even aware that was a thing, and I think most people watching this are going to feel the same way. So what is that?
Well, so I can't go into the details.
No details. I mean, just general speaking.
Right. Yeah, so there's a lot of companies out there that, let's say they have a staff of X amount of engineers, and they're coming out with a new product around the corner, and you've done something over here, and they find out about it, and you can get an RFP, a request for proposal, to do a project. And so you will do, 40, 60, 80, 200 hours for one of the big names, helping them, wrap up a new project. So I've done a lot more of that stuff on the loudspeaker side of things. That's the irony is now I'm working with electronics, right? But more of that R&D side of things was on the speaker side.
I always thought that every company, and thinking back to my history in the automotive industry, it now kind of makes sense that the audio industry would be like this too. But I always thought that the company had, their set of engineers, and they designed everything they make, and that was it. I mean, everything else would be super secret, which of course you'd be under NDA for working on any projects or anything. But like in the auto industry, I worked for Johnson Controls. They were a tier 1 interior designer, and they provided dashboards and seats especially. And until I worked there, I always thought, GM and Ford and Chrysler, they always made their own stuff. No, they just assembled it.
No, that's right. In fact, I had a Ram truck one time, and the dash in it cracked. And the original dash was made by Textron. And the replacement dash was made by Johnson Controls.
Yeah.
And then I replaced one for a customer, and that one was made by Textron again. And so, like, to blow your mind even more, even though they all come in a box that says Mopar, because it was for a Chrysler product, there's a different, when you actually flip the part over, there's a sticker on there. It's like Johnson Controls. And when I used to think of Johnson Controls, I thought of like industrial AC, like Frick rotary screw compressors for like ammonia refrigeration. I never thought of them
That's
as,
the other division.
Molding LDPE dashboards and ABS interior parts. But yeah, I guess they kind of do everything.
Well, like, it's technically called Johnson Controls Automotive, but
right.
Yeah, their control side is still going. They actually lost most of their automotive about the time I left Michigan.
Yeah, and what'll blow your mind even more is, this industry, speakers and things like that. You go on a lot of websites and you'll see somebody here's their crossover, right? You'll see Mundorf or some nice brand of capacitors or some parts on it. And then you'll see somebody else post a picture of, oh, more Mundorf, right? So I'm not saying there's a lot of that, but there's commonalities in every industry. When you find the best parts, like, what's that? I want that in my thing, right?
I would imagine it's pretty hard to actually innovate, so probably most things are based on something else. So,
well, and there is some of that. So, like some of the manufacturers, and not necessarily the ones I've done work for, but some out there right now, like they might have a cap made by, let's say, Clarity Cap, but it might have a winding or a foil thickness or something that's specific to that OEM. So, like, you can't buy that Clarity Cap, at Matasound, right?
Right.
But in their crossover, this cap is made by Clarity for them a certain way. So, yeah, it might be made by a nice OEM, but it is kind of a proprietary part.
Still a different part.
Right, exactly. That's just one good example.
So based on your experience in general in the industry, give us some things that you've seen really start to change over, say, past 5 years, if anything.
Well, I'm probably not a great example for this because I was the guy that I would, let's put my dealer hat on for a minute. When I was working with customers on their room, the first meeting was like, I don't want to see any speakers. And they would come, hear my setup. I used to have a by appointment space and I had cabinet speakers, at least for the left, center, and right. I had, fairly large subwoofers. And before you knew it, it's like, well, this sounds really good. I think I could swing this and make it work. And I dealt with this one speaker manufacturer that was kind of I don't want to say like a game changer, but it was different because you would get somebody that said, well, okay, I'm okay with cabinet speakers, but they can't be that big, right? There was always limitations. And I'll just tell you, it's not a big deal. One of them was Totem, right? They make these towers that are relatively small.
I was going to say, they're not that big.
They're not. And it's funny because it looked 5-10 years ago, wattage was a hard thing to get, right? 10 years ago.
Wattage,
remember when wattage, like amplifiers, remember when it used to be $1 a watt, 20 years ago when everything was Class A, B, and then about 10 years ago, Class D started to become more common and wattage kind of became, easy to get.
Oh,
so the biggest thing that changed is, you can have a setup with relatively small speakers, but if you have enough juice, you can get them to do relatively impressive things, right? I'll give you an example. Cedia this year, we did that with Totem, and they brought their Tribe on-wall speaker, which is a practically priced, I think the price point's somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 US, somewhere. I don't want to promise anybody an exact number, but it's a, made in Canada, 4-driver with a tweeter, on-wall product. It's like a 42-inch long on-wall speaker. So they had those for left, center, and right. Now, that's not a crazy expensive speaker. It's not cheap, but it's not crazy expensive. And a lot of people would say, if I'm spending $6,800 on the LCR or $4,500, depending on where that MSRP lines up, I'm probably going to put that on a receiver. But at Cedia, we brought a pair of M8s, bridged everything, went nuts, had an ACT4 processor, and those things were astounding in like the amount of impact they had because we had a lot of, clean power for them. And so that's what's really different than 10 years ago. Even when Class D kind of came out and the amp was, 150 watts a channel and whatnot. Now that you can take an M8 and you can bridge it and you can get more than 600 watts by 4 on a bridged M8, power is easy to get now. And so you can have a relatively small speaker that, so long as you're not X-maxing it, whether it be in the wall or on the wall, you can do very impressive things without having to have something a foot wide that weighs 150 pounds and,
That's something I've seen change just on the consumer side is I do remember when you started to see, take for example, Monolith, when they came out with their Class D amps. In general, I've seen it go from Class D being, here's your 9 or 11 channel amp to power your whole room, to more serious, okay, here's your 300 watt per channel Class D.
Mm-hmm. And the amps we make are extremely conservative in their power numbers. So like we promise 200 watts at 8 ohms, right? But that is all channels driven on a typical household outlet.
Yes.
We're not even assuming you're going to put it on a dedicated 20 amp circuit. That's just plugged into a 15 amp circuit, could be shared with your lights. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of power you can expect from that product, all channels driven, and everyone comes with a proof of performance sheet. Like, remember the Rockford car audio days?
Yep.
You'd get your Rockford amp, and they would have a sheet that said, like, this amp did this many watts, both channels driven or whatever.
Yep.
We do something like that. Our numbers are realistic. Every amp will meet them. That's a guaranteed kind of number.
Any company that puts out the all channels spec gets a pass in my book, because it seems like 90+% of them will bury what that power measurement actually means. And when you find out, it's bullshit. 1 channel out of 8 played at a 1K tone. You have absolutely zero clue how to compare that to anything else, because it's not apples to apples.
Right. And if I'm being realistic, like let's say your theater has a total of 13 channels.
Yeah.
Are you going to have an explosion that's going to ignite all 13 channels to 0 dB FS? No. But it's really good if at least 70% of those channels can reach their rated power, right? And with a typical AVR, that's not really going to be possible. I know that they're getting better, but for the most part, AVRs and even the kind of budget wonder multi-channel amps, you're lucky if, a 5-channel amp can give you full juice on 3 channels. Some of them can do all channels driven. There's some good stuff out there. I'd like to say that we're one of them, obviously, but it's a different experience when you have that sort of limitless dynamic range feeling. Like, you watch something at reference, no compression, it's just clean, it's fun. And when there's not compression, I feel like the system is less fatiguing, right? Because think about it like you run a saw cutting a piece of wood in your driveway.
Yeah, your ears are going to hear that whether you're noticing it or not.
Right, that circular saw is like 85 to 90 decibels at a meter. It's not actually that high in SPL. But the difference is it's very, it's a continuous level. If you look at it on an RTA, you're going to see kind of a line of all that noise and that ringing of the blade. And if you think about audio, you have a crest factor, right? And the higher the crest factor, the peak over the dip, per se, you're going to have a less fatiguing experience. So when you have lots of power and lots of headroom, you can have realistic reference peaks without fatigue. Mm-hmm. When you don't have that and you keep turning up the volume, you're essentially just compressing everything, and then your duty cycle's higher and you get that ear fatigue.
You get to that point where you're just making it worse. It's like putting power into a null.
Right, and that's why CDA was impressive. So like Totem's room was 4 cloth walls. I mean, they were cloth, like they're just cloth stretched over poles. They're not holding in any sound. There's no roof, and you can just walk right into this sort of open concept booth, right? And you know what the noise floor is like at a convention center.
Wow.
People talking everywhere, other guys demoing, and we had 4 of their powered subs. We had it was like a 5.4 system, simple. And we had so much power on tap that if we wanted to let it rip, it was like, I can't believe that's coming from that. But, as much as I want to give credit to the speaker, I've got to give it to, like, we have a lot of power on tap. When we bridge that amp, we got 600 plus watts. We're high passed at 80 hertz. We're not X-maxing anything. We have the headroom. We're not roasting tweeters. That's what's changed the experience for me compared to 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago, if I told myself in 2014, 15, I was going to have all that power, I'd be looking at like Crown professional amps. I wouldn't even be looking at the stuff the home industry had to offer.
Yeah.
Right? Now you can get pro audio kind of power levels from high fidelity home products. That, to me, that's the game changer.
Hey, while we're on that, for everybody at home, quickly just detail you don't have to go into the weeds, but I'm just saying this because I think most people are going to hear the term Class D and have the wrong connotation about what it means compared to, say, Class AB. Okay.
So I made a blog post on this, and give me a second to kind of collect the thought here. So Class AB, Class A, we'll just start with that one. Class A is a sine wave from a like full biased on transistor, right? It never crosses 0. Class AB is like a Class B amplifier where you have a positive transistor, a negative transistor, and the voltage crosses zero. The reason it's called AB is you apply bias so that you turn the N channel and the P channel on simultaneously, so that when that wave kind of crosses the zero mark, right? If you've looked at a sine wave, they meet up. You know, they look like this, right? If they don't meet and they this point doesn't touch, that's called crossover distortion. So a little bit of bias is what makes an AB amp not a B amp. So if you have a very cold biased AB amplifier, you have raised distortion, you've made yourself a Class B amplifier. You give it some bias, you make it a Class AB amp, and the more bias you give it, the more Class A power it will make until it kind of moves out of that range where the devices are switched fully on at low power. Now, Class D takes the analog waveform and it samples it, and it creates pulses that to our ear are not discernible from class, analog output.
So it's high enough resolution where we can't tell.
Right. So the carrier frequency of the amp can be 200, 300, 400, 500K, very high frequency. And what it does is it applies what's called a sawtooth sample to the sine wave, and it sort of creates these pulses. That's how our amp works, and that is technically not digital. What it's doing is it's just sampling and generating pulses. It's not actually ever converting it really to ones and zeros. It's just pulse width modulation, PWM. People have probably heard that before. If they've ever talked about switch mode power supplies or read anything about that, that's a PWM supply. That's kind of what a Class D amplifier is just a PWM amp. Now, there are some amps out there in the marketplace that'll say something like direct digital or something like that in their name. And that's different. You can come in on a digital input and you can drive that sawtooth generator straight from ones and zeros, and you never are sampling analog. That sort of comes in digital, becomes pulses, and into our ear it's analog. And usually there's a low pass filter at the output of these amplifiers to cut down on the amount of the carrier signal present.
Now, I would imagine that going that route would be at the detriment of, let's say, believability of the signal.
I mean, all of those routes can work really good. I'll give you an example of something I do that is against being a purist. I don't like to say expensive. I have a very high quality phono pre in my system. I do have vinyl, right? And I kind of went nuts with that. I've got a Mod-Right PH 150S. And that's like a, 11K retail piece. Really nice phono pre. Here's where the blasphemy comes in. I like subwoofers.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to run my left and right speakers even when I'm doing stereo in my room full range. And so what do? I come in analog and I commit a SIN. I convert that to 192 digital and I do my bass management. And everybody that comes and listens, like, oh, that sounds great. But it's like we're committing a SIN. We're going from analog to digital back to analog again. So does it really matter? I mean, I think if you're doing it right, it can be fine. I prefer that greatly over just listening to the two speakers analog direct. I've had people, I've turned the subs off and just done ADC and straight analog and went back and forth, and I've not had anybody really be able to tell the difference. Now, when we talk about the amps, if we're sampling the input versus coming in ones and zeros, I think if you do anything right, you can do it well and it should be indiscernible, right? But if you are a purist and you just want to know that this amp was, this signal was never actually converted to digital, technically a sampling amplifier is not actually digital.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? So, it's a mindset thing. I think I like bass management. So like I said, I'm committing sin in my analog rig.
You're going to have to turn in your analog card.
Yeah, but you know what? It sounds great. I have this, one of the speaker manufacturers I've done some business with, they make this really great test LP. It's Menger out of Germany. They have a really cool speaker with a kind of interesting, nearly full range driver called the Menger transducer. And it's a bending wave driver. It's some cool stuff.
Never heard of
it. We get you to Texas, you can hear some. They're really cool.
All right.
But Daniela had somebody put together this wonderful test LP that has some really cool tracks on, and one of them is called like Jazz Variants. I don't know how to find this anywhere else, but when you play it, it's got some really interesting drum recordings, and that's just so much more fun with subs that there's no way I'm skipping to A to B in bass management to do that in any other way.
Gotcha.
It's definitely not ruining the experience.
I never even thought about there being test LPs. I've had a bunch of test CDs back then.
Well, so I have test LPs where you're like, testing your turntable settings. This is actually sort of like an audiophile sampler.
Yeah.
It's a 2 LP set with all the audiophile goodies on it, and it's just wonderful to play to LP. But yet I'm making a digital, whatever. It's sin, but it's good.
So speaking of your system, what do you run at home right now? Do you have a separate 2-channel in home theater, or like me?
So I have a combo setup, and it changes sometimes because I'll try different things. But for the most part, it is a 9-bed channel system, and then it has 4 Atmos speakers, and I run somewhere between 6 and 8 subs depending on what I'm trying to do. Now, I say 6 to 8 subs, I'm running them in groups. So, like, logically, it's 4 groups. There's a left stack, a right stack, and a pair in the back. Sometimes it's different subs, but it's always that kind of system, but it's got to be dual purpose. So my room's like 14 and a half by 20. Mm-hmm. And the speakers are pulled way out in the room, like the typical audiophile 2-channel room, but there is a 120-inch screen and a JVC projector. And I don't mind the speakers being pulled out like that. And the reason why is the center channel's further back. It's closer to the screen.
I was going to ask if you run a center or phantom.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm running 9-bed channels. So center, left, right, front wides, side surround backs. Mm-hmm. And if you were drawing a line through all these speakers, you're getting closer to a circle, which is actually what I prefer.
Yep.
I don't really want my left, center, right being like a flat plane if I can avoid it.
Right.
It's not that it really matters from like a timing perspective or anything. So obviously, we can correct that in processors. But if I was just building a room and I can have a freestanding speaker without, spousal acceptance factors or something like that, I prefer to kind of create that round arrangement of channels if I can. Now, my front wides and side surrounds and stuff, they're all in the wall. The height speakers are in the ceiling, but the left, center, right, and the subwoofers are all cabinet speakers.
Have you ever played with the bouncy house Atmos speakers? The ones that either sit on top of the mains and bounce off the ceiling?
Okay.
Or...
Yes, right. Yeah, so I have done that. So one of my last activities as a dealer, I bought because I had a customer who wanted, this is what he could do, right? His ceiling, for whatever reason, there was no perforations to be made. So a company like those L800 speakers from Polk, you can put in a height module in them.
Yep.
You can drop it in. It's already got the binding posts on the back of the speakers. It worked okay. You really had to run that module hot and get, to get that reflection effect to work. Mm-hmm. And, it was kind of convincing. Remember when Dolby had that Atmos test disc with the ball that bounced around?
Yep.
Or like Horror Universe, all those things.
Yep.
You could get the effect, but it was kind of band limited, not because of anything with that brand. Like, they're not doing anything wrong, but that technology, without excessive DSP applied, you're going to be kind of band limited because you're looking at like, what can I reflect to the drywall and back to you? Mm-hmm. Your ceiling was glass, you might actually be better off. Otherwise, you're getting a lot of like 500 to 5K reflected. Things above 5K, not so well. Things below 500 don't really reflect. They sort of propagate as a sphere from that point. Mm-hmm. So you see what I mean? The effect, it kind of worked, but the convincing aspect, it was better than not doing it, right?
I never thought about the bandwidth limitation, but that might explain why I've never heard them really give the true Atmos effect. I've only heard them give sound from above. Like, yes, I can hear there's rain or a helicopter. Yes, it's up above. It's convincingly on the ceiling, but
right.
I've never heard it steer an object around the room.
So the most convincing around the room non-reflecting setup I ever heard was last CEDIA. Of course, last CEDIA I had my own room and I stayed in there a lot, but I did get out a little bit. And I went down to the Dine Audio booth and they had a sound bar that, I don't know the product that well. I don't think it was using a lot of reflecting technology. I think it was using really, really good phasing and delay technology to make its array sound like things. And if you were sitting in the right spot, like within a relatively friendly sweet spot, mm-hmm. it was very convincing, the all around kind of, bubble you got out of it. I mean, you could play they didn't have this in the demo, but I'm imagining if I were to play Chocolate Chip Trip from Tool, you would get that all around you effect. Like I can get that from 2 speakers, right? The imaging is so good, you can get that effect. The faster your amp, the faster your speaker, the better you'll get that. And this was a sound bar, and it did that really, really well. That was impressive.
That is.
And they did in their demo, they kind of knew the 11 seats or 7 seats or whatever was in the room, and they would kind of highlight one and make something spin around your head and only that seat. And the guys next to you are looking like, well, what are you experiencing? And you're sitting there, and it's like a musical notes, just like swirling around. and I don't think that's working with anything reflected. That speaker really didn't have anything pointing up or anything like that. It was just I think, really good DSP. So I think in the future, we're going to see a lot more of that and a lot less of just bouncing stuff off of everything, because you can't guarantee the customer's room.
I'm totally okay with that as long as you've only got one seat with that experience, but which I'm fine with. My whole setup is just around one seat. The other 4, I don't care what you guys get.
Well, it was kind of friendly. So they played movie demos, and there's I think there was at least 7 seats, like 3 and 4, kind of in a bowling pin sort of arrangement, right? Mm-hmm. And it was, I went in there twice. It was a really good demo, regardless of which one of those seats you sat in. So I think the technology's there now. It's an expensive product. I don't know when they're coming out with it, but that's the future. If you have a room where you're like, all I can do is a sound bar, that's about to not be a bad thing. Sound bars are getting better, and there's one with some serious power and DSP behind it.
I can see the only downside being that those are going to come out as a $6,000 to $10,000 sound bar.
It's up there. I think it's more than that. I don't want to talk about the price because I could be wrong, but it's up there. But hey, you know what they say? Why is it expensive? It's worth it, right? If you want it to work and do all the things it's trying to do, it's going to cost something.
Yep.
So that was impressive.
Really, only a handful of true impressive to me sound bars on the market, and they're all in that price range. So there's a reason.
I remember when I moved in this house downstairs, I bought this Yamaha one that must have had like 50 drivers in it. And they were trying to do it.
I almost bought one of those. I know what you're talking about.
Or something.
Yeah.
It was pretty good, but it was definitely depending on reflections in your room. And I remember when they demoed it at CEDIA in 2016 or 17 in Dallas, it sounded really good in that room because the room was small. But when you put it in a really large room, all those reflections, kind of like the height channel speakers that sit on top, they're kind of difficult to dial in because, your power through air, drops off every time you double your distance. Well, it's even worse when you hit a reflective surface made out of what?
All of a sudden you need 2
rock, glass,
top.
Yeah, and if you have a ceiling that's some kind of lattice work or shiplap or something like that, or exposed trusses, it's going to be like a diffuser.
Yeah.
And so your effectiveness is going to be a lot lower. So I think for like a single speaker source, I think DSP is going to be the world's best friend.
I agree. I remember that speaker, though, or the soundbar, I remember it getting just rave reviews. And then I saw something recently. This is why I almost bought one. It was just a few months ago. Somebody online, don't remember if it was a group or whatever, but he said he just picked one up on Marketplace for like $100. I'm like, wow. But the only reason I didn't get it, I just wanted to play with it because I did find one here locally for like $150. There was some kind of limitation, like it didn't work with DTS or some HDMI spec where it was just like, what am I going to do with this if I buy it? Because it was so old by now.
Well, you're kind of a bass head when you have a soundbar like that and it has a subwoofer output.
Yeah.
Instead of buying like the matching Yamaha sub, I had an M&K X12 dual 12-inch sub plugged into it.
Nice.
So that's like, is that really defeating the point of the soundbar if you've got kind of a gigantic subwoofer plugged into it? I don't know, but
can't hurt.
It was not bad for my living room.
Yeah.
But I do feel like that's the future.
I agree. It's definitely going that way, if nothing else, because more and more people are renting. They can't tear into a room or a ceiling, and they don't want to be moving a whole home theater setup from apartment to apartment or house to house. So soundbars are easy.
Well, and that's why I thought this last CD was interesting. So everything was on-wall speakers. And so could you do an on-wall speaker in an apartment? You could. You would have to make a couple small holes, but you're not going to have to hog out anything big. It's stuff that you could fill. or if you're renting a house, or they make a stand you can put that speaker on, and you still have a very minimal footprint on the floor, still much smaller than your typical deep tower, right?
Yep.
And with good electronics, you can get a really good cinema experience in a house that you're renting, or an apartment you're renting, or or in a basement where, let's say, you have concrete walls in the basement. And so what can you do with that? An on-wall speaker is a great solution.
It works.
10 years ago, I didn't, because I'm kind of circling back to this, like what has really changed. I got into doing this stuff as my install company in 2015. 2015 was like the very first Atmos receivers. Atmos processors were pretty new at that point. They were a year or two behind the receivers. I don't know if DTSX was out yet. I know Atmos kind of beat them to the game. There was this weird time where you had Atmos first, and then the format for HDMI went from 1.4 to 2.0, and it was a lot of change all at one time. But what I really didn't see coming was the ability to have practical on-wall speakers and then be able to just get a bunch of power behind them and have really great experiences very easily. Back then, to get the same effect, I would have much larger speakers, probably higher efficiency because of the power limitations and stuff of the day. Especially when you're trying to do 11 channels. Because Atmos originally, people were trying to do 11, remember like 11.2 processors?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we take 16 channels for granted now, but back then that was like 11.2 or 11.1. That was impressive, right?
And even then, you still had to usually add outboard amps to your receiver.
Right,
For the extra .2 or extra 4.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I had to do that. So I know you've seen some of these questions ahead of time. Hopefully this is one you had a little time at least to think about. I'm curious, in your experience, have you ever thought about designing, could be a speaker, could be an amp, whatever. Have you ever just thought, if money was no object, if we were living in the world of Star Trek, if you wanted something, you just made it. You ever had any kind of thought experiments like that? Like, hey, if I'm ever going to do a speaker one day, it's going to be this, and I know exactly what I'm going to do.
I've had thoughts like that. It's crazy. So there's only like so many ways to do something, right? We take power, we turn it into acoustic power. So we take electrical power, make it acoustic power, right? We want to the trend is to take a lot of devices and make it few devices, or to simplify life, right?
Yeah, all in one.
And now, this isn't going to scratch what you're looking at, but I feel like in the future, having some kind of integrated solution where I know exactly what my electronics do, and I make a speaker product that is just ideally paired to it, and I'm able to sort of, get that to the masses. I think that would be cool. You look at Star Trek, right? Everything's like, is it credits? What are they doing that? I haven't seen it in a long time, but is money no object, or it's like everybody works, right? They all have the same means, right? So in an ideal world, we'd all have like the perfect theater.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, what's the biggest limitation to having a perfect theater? It's usually the room.
True.
Right. I mean, so many people, like, I have a friend, John, his room is big, but because it's wider than we'd really like it to be, his seating position ends up being kind of further towards the back than we'd really like. And there's always some kind of thing there. So I feel like if I were doing anything, cost is not an object. It's just a matter of check a box, it shows up. It would be, something to that effect, some way to kind of guarantee performance.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You ever run into anything like, for example, I saw a set of Slate speakers, and I just thought, well, number one, that's really cool sounding. Just the fact that you made something hundreds of pounds into a speaker, but it looked really
was
cool.
Was that ACURUS?
Yeah.
ACURUS Acoustics, is that who that was? Yeah. Yeah, they make stone speakers. Everybody has a material of choice. It's Magico has aluminum. ACURUS uses stone. YG, everything's aluminum. I mean, like YG, even the cones are aluminum, right? You've got companies doing variable densities of MDF. Everybody has like a certain poison that they've picked that they're like, this is the way, right? This is the blue pill. Whichever one that gets you out of the matrix. That they pick something, they build around that one. So you're talking about what is your cost no object thing. I mean, we're not going to get there in this video, but there's something. So let's use like Magico, cool stuff. I have dealers that do Magico. Every speaker's made out of billet panels bolted together. They're all solid. They're heavy. You've got stone. All these things have different resonant properties, but everybody makes them work. That's what's so fun about this hobby is you go to a show like Axpona, that New York show, Capitol Audio Fest that just happened. There's 100 rooms.
Yep.
Out of those 100 rooms, there's some cool stuff to check out. And the last show we just did, that was with Brian and Kirby, y'all were there. That was with Mon Acoustic. They make their stuff out of bolted together aluminum. Mm-hmm. That's a really cool, different product. And, I make amplifiers. And what I've kind of noticed is when a guy walks in the room, the first thing he notices is the speakers because they're tall and they're big.
Right.
And I kind of like that we kept that V notch because when you walk in 20 feet away, you see that, you're like, oh, that's different.
Yep. Goes right to it.
They walk in, there's two things they're either going to notice. If the amp is a black box, it could be one of 100 things.
Yeah,
if it's a silver box, it could be one of 10 things. But there's two things that jump out. One, does it have blue meters? I won't say what that is. We're not going to get into that. But we all know what that one is. And if it has the big V notch, that's this thing. There's other things with meters, but there's only one thing with blue meters, and there's only one thing with a V notch.
Kind of like cones.
I'm all about keeping that V notch. It's distinct. I just made a blog post because I get people all the time. They're like, why do you have that thing? What's the purpose? There is a practical reason for having it, and that's outlined in that post. But quite as important as function is that it's kind of iconic and it's different. And you walk in that room, you're like, oh, that's different. Kind of like that slate.
Where's your blog post?
It's on the website, I'm pretty sure. The ARAGON AV website.
Okay.
And on the Facebook group.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so it's just like, the V notch, what's it good for? That's the post. And, we put our channels together because they share a thermal envelope. The V notch also gives you some forgiveness with the shelf distance. So think about like if your heatsink was at the top of the amp, you'd have to have your shelf 4 or 5 inches above it. Mm-hmm. If you have the V notch, you're kind of creating room. So even if a shelf is an inch or two above the amp,
still have
you have 3 to 4 inches. But yeah, you get kind of a cooling tone. And there's a couple other reasons for having it, but probably just as important as the function is the fact that you walk in that room. I was talking to somebody from Denmark, and they said, you know what? I love the amp, and the minute I saw the amp that it looks like a lumberjack one had, I knew it was ARAGON. I knew it.
Yeah.
And that tells me that, like, hey, that's here to stay. That's cool. People know it. It's different. It does have a technical purpose. But just as importantly, people see it and they're like, I know exactly what that is.
It's brand
I can't tell you I can't tell you how many people at Axpona are like, man, I'm happy to see you guys here. The minute they walked in, even if they didn't see the logo at the door, the minute they saw that faceplate, they knew.
Yeah. I heard that time and time again. So it works.
It does.
All right. So funny story time, because I just saw your drink. So we're at the hotel bar after one of the evenings, just, winding down. And I'm just kind of tired. I'm going over my thoughts. I'm at one end of the table. He's way off at the end of the table. And I just hear the waiter has gotten, a couple people's orders. And I just hear old fashioned. I'm thinking in my head, yeah, that sounds good. I haven't had one in a while. So I just said, make it 2. Not paying any attention. So they come out and I about burned my teeth off after the first big swig. Tell everybody what I ordered.
I don't remember what that was, but the next one I got you was better. I took that one. I got you one with Blanton's. That was an upgrade.
Yeah, the second one was a nice, beautiful, normal.
I'm pretty sure anything after that first one would have been nice. You ripped the Band-Aid off there.
Dude, I was having flashbacks to Everclear when I was 19. Just, whoa. That was intense.
I went to a ramen place yesterday. I know this has nothing to do with audio, but you brought the old-fashioned thing. I always get this bowl there called tonkatsu spicy, right? And they said, hey, the menu's changed. It's tonkatsu red now. I said, okay, what's different? Same thing, really. Okay, just I want that. Fine.
Yeah.
Well, how spicy do you want it? I'm like, on a level of what? They're like, well, it goes to 10. I'm like, I want 10. They're like, oh, nobody finished this 10. I'm like, okay, I want 8. Make it 9, right? I think I got 9.
Yeah.
I ate every solid thing that was in the bowl, but usually I even finish off the broth, right? And I'm at the end, like, I don't know what happened, but some of that spiciness just kind of settled to the bottom. And I got a big old scoop of some red, like, devil's hot sauce or whatever it was, took a bite, and I mean, I started like coughing. There was no breathing with whatever that spice was. And I eat hot stuff. You go somewhere and they're like, hey, we have a ghost pepper wing sauce. Yes.
Bring it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's not even a do I want that? It's like, yes. Some kind of chip challenge, why not? This was like the one chip challenge in a bowl when you got to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
The rest of it was fine, but that bottom where all that spice powder was laying, I got a scoop of that. I was like, nope. I need another Perrier. I'm done. They're like, we can't believe you finished it. I'm like, I guess there was a 10. I guess that was a 9.
Yeah, 10 is they just skip the broth.
Well, and I got home and I was telling my wife and my friend John, he was over listening to some stuff, and I said, you know what's weird is I would do it again. That's what's really wrong. I was already an hour later. I was like, you know what? If like I could go there next week and get that again. I don't know why. It was kind of painful, and I was like sweating and sort of embarrassed, but I would do it again.
Well, we forget the pain.
Right. Well, it's like when you get your subs dialed in and you're playing some of those tracks that go down to like 5 hertz, 10 hertz, 15, whatever, and you're doing impressive things. Like, you don't want to do that all the time. It's fun for a minute. It might be bad for your house when your wall's flexing, right?
But now you can.
Right. You've got a bunch of 18s, but you do it. Like a new guy comes to your house, what do? You show him that cool parlor trick.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is now that you have a processor that has linear response down to single digits, because of the DAC, you can really show the parlor tricks. Now,
That's
again, you do it all.
Time I've heard you pronounce that linear. I've never heard anyone pronounce linear. Where are you from?
Okay. Texas.
Is that how they say it down there?
I don't know. Now you're making me think about it. Okay, flat response. We're just going to take that word out of the vocabulary. Flat response.
No, I get it. It's just I'm from Detroit, so I hear Canadian and Upper Michigan and Midwestern. We get a broad mix, so I've got my weird stuff too that I'm sure most people have never heard.
The other Rick in the company, he's from Wisconsin, I think. And the first time I talked to him on the phone, I was still a dealer at that time, and I called him up about something. I think I was just impressed with the product, actually, and I just wanted to talk about it for fun, because we do that sometimes. You're like, I want to talk to one of the guys that had their hand in it. And I was talking to him, and like 30 seconds into that conversation, I was like, did you know you sound exactly like Seth MacFarlane? And he's like, huh? And it's like, you've talked to him or you've heard him in a video or something, right? He sounds like Seth MacFarlane.
In his natural voice.
Next time you talk to him, right. Yeah, not when he does like when he laughs or something, like his normal talking. It's like I feel
funny
like
you mention that, because just talking to him a few times, something in the back of my head was like, there's something about his voice that I'm recognizing, but now that you say that,
that's what it is. And that voice tone is good for that like hypothetical voice of reason, right? Like if you were about to go cut some wood to make a speaker, but you've been drinking too much, and you should have the little the good devil pop up, or angel or whatever, and say, hey, maybe you shouldn't use power tools if you're drunk. That would be Rick Santiago's voice saying, in that like calm Seth MacFarlane demeanor, should you do that? It's interesting, like this voice of reason kind of thing.
Then you got Kirby over here. Nah, fuck it, do it.
Right, exactly. I could see that. There's two people in industry that kind of have that voice of reason demeanor. One of them works at Dyne Audio. I won't say who, but super cool guy. And anytime I hear either one of those guys talking, completely different accents and everything, but it's like you could deliver a line and I would believe it, because it sounds like I should listen and not do what you're about to warn me not to do.
I can see that.
Right?
So speaking of shows, I assume that with probably various companies, you've attended a buttload of different shows. What are some of the things at shows that you've seen work really well that you wish they would all do?
Oh man, that's tough, because it really depends on the equipment. One of the guys that like the last show we went to, I ventured around. I went to some other rooms, and as you know, a lot of those rooms are tiny.
Yeah, really tiny. I don't think people have an idea. Let's just give them a brief example of how small these rooms are. Like, okay, you're trying to set up 2-channel speakers. You want people to have a great experience in at least one seat. You've got equipment. You got a rack. You come into this motel room that you barely have enough room to walk around the bed with a dresser,
Right.
big glass window with drapes. What do people have to do when they first walk into that room?
Well, so like you're talking about from a setup perspective, or from like the visitor perspective?
I mean, everybody knows what a regular small motel room looks like, but trying to picture
So
audio equipment can be weird if you've never been to a show.
So I'll give you Expona, for example. When I walked in our room at Expona, and we did that one with Totem, half the room was kind of like Totem did their side their way. Both sides used ARAGON electronics. Both sides used Totem speakers, but it was sort of like a split room. One side was the bedroom, one side was the living room. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Both small. When I first walked in there, some of the furniture was still in there. And so you have your contact at the hotel, and I'm like, we've got to get this stuff out. I mean, they took the bed out, right? But there was still kind of a half couch and a desk, and I'm like, what am I doing with this stuff? I mean, it's like it would literally be right in front of a tweeter. But
is it customary for when you are setting up to have the rooms already stripped, or is that up to each?
Yeah, so whoever's hosting the event, they usually work with the hotel to take everything they can out of the room. And so if you look at those shows, you'll notice it'll be like 2 rooms with stuff in them, and then a room that has nobody exhibiting. And what that is, that's the room they just threw all the stuff into.
Okay.
It's not that somebody's staying in that room. That's the room that they threw the beds in. And you'll notice the headboards stay on the wall.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
And yeah, so you'll get like one of my dealers, Shane, at the New York show. He had a really cool backdrop. Said Absolute audio video. Really beautiful backdrop.
Mm-hmm. Was that one of the pre-lit or backlit ones?
Right. Yeah, he's got a light that kind of glows through. It looked really nice.
Those look good.
But because the room went from, this side over, you could still see that headboard to your right. Mm. And it's like you don't really know what you're getting into till you get to that room. The biggest thing that's always in my mind is I just want to cover that headboard. I hate looking at that thing.
Gotcha.
That's not a big sonic detriment, right? But that's why I've noticed, like Totem, every time they do a room, they cover like at least 3 of the walls. Mm. When they're kind of done, you can't really tell it was a hotel room, right? But you're asking like what everybody does wrong, and
well, not necessarily that, but maybe like I know that I've seen a couple things done really well in whatever rooms. Don't even remember which ones they were, and I'm just thinking, why doesn't everyone else do that? It seems like one of those things like, why didn't I think of that? And you have to have seen a bunch of stuff like that.
Yeah, the problem is, like, unless you're doing the same hotel over and over, which the people at Expona have that advantage because it's kind of the same venue over and over again, the Schaumburg Marriott, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. That New York show, I didn't pick anything there. I kind of just showed up. That was interesting. What I've found is, even though it's against conventional wisdom, I actually prefer the little rooms. That room that our equipment was in on the first floor, that was kind of terrible. That partition, like every bit of base that, like having a solid wall is also bad, right? Because everything's constrained and you're going to get a, standing wave and you'll have a null and blah, blah, blah. But everything just went through there. We were putting all of our standing wave in the room behind us, and they were giving us their standing wave.
Yeah, they were.
So I went in the next room, just, say hi. I knew some of the people over there. And
is that ours?
Our guys were demoing, and they were trying to like make us stronger, right? And I hear the, just booming into their room. And so then they start demoing, and it's like we were having like an ISCA sort of sound off room to room, right? And that makes you demo at higher levels than you'd really want to. And so I kind of just like those small 13 by 16 rooms. Not that I like that they're small, but it's like, geez, it's just better to have your own room, not be sharing a temporary partition or any of that mess.
So
I feel like
you find that even the small rooms contain the experience better.
Well, I think that there's something to be said for not having such a loud neighbor to where you have to demo crazy loud or whatever that is. That room we had no choice but to sort of fight what was on the other wall. Mm-hmm. Right? It was like being at Cedia with the high noise floor. It was kind of a similar event. Now the room is big, But you'll also notice what else that does is everybody comes in there and they just kind of spread out. The room looked beautiful. It still sounded really, really good. But because of that, sort of bass battle we had, that was kind of tough.
I think it's always interesting to see how people will almost exclusively gravitate, like, they're back in grade school. Nobody ever sits in the front row. They're always hanging in the back, maybe the middle.
Yep.
Which is kind of a bummer because usually the front's the best seat.
Well, in our room, I think it was kind of the middle.
Yeah, yours was definitely the middle.
Right. But at Expona this year, 2025, I think we had a great thing going. We had a decent sized room. It wasn't tiny. It wasn't huge. It was still kind of private. And I think the sound was good. We didn't bring in 10 million kinds of treatment. It was just a good, practical room. And I thought it sounded nice. Next year, I will bring something more visibly interesting to put behind the speakers. That's my folly. But the room sounded great. That's what everybody should strive for, is the sound first and visual stuff later. I've been to some rooms where the visual thing makes the room so dead that, the experience is not good. I've seen that.
I've seen that.
Not necessarily one I've been in, but I've walked into some like that where they've got so many banners or so many things or so many fabric things that the room is just really, really, really insanely dead. And that's never a great experience, right?
Yep.
And you're talking about 12 by 14, 13 by 16 small kinds of rooms. We did one in Dallas that was small like that, and I brought in a pair of these Reference 31 subs from Rel. That's a pretty big subwoofer. And what's interesting is, like, in that little room, it was good. That you had sort of a walkway into the room. Bringing subs was a nice thing. Like what would have been sort of a cancellation where the main speakers sounded good. Having those dialed in at 30 hertz and below kind of restored that low end that we were kind of losing. So, I thought that was a great room. We had some Confidence 50s. We had the Reference 31s. We had ARAGON monoblocks, tungsten preamp. It was a great system.
You just reminded me of a room I went in a few years ago. It was at Florida Audio Fest. I believe it was the Martin Logan room. And they had, I can't remember if they were separate subs or the ones built into the speakers they had in there, but they were dialed up so much. I mean, they had to have been 20 dB hot. What's that song? Chris something. It's one of those ones you hear at every show.
Chris Stapleton? No. Anyway,
the song is acoustic guitar, and it's got some taps on the acoustic guitar near the front, right? The subs,
Nils Lofgren?
Yes, that Nils, thank you. The subs were hitting my chest walking into the room so much that I'm looking around thinking they had like a 40-inch sub. I mean, it was just insane. It sounded good, but I mean, way, way, way out of balance. And they were crossed over super low, so maybe 50, 60. It was just so weird that because I'd never heard that song like that. And then I'm walking down the hall, 3-4 rooms down. They come out and they're complaining.
Well, and on that note, when you bring subs, right, everybody looks at the room and they have an expectation because they see the big, massive sub. One of the weird things I did at the last Expona was I wanted to show people that our M4X can sound amazing as a stereo amp. You bridge it, there's your stereo amp, right? So what I did was I hooked that up as an alternate system to a pair of Totem Fires. And I heard some guys on the first floor playing that Yoki track with the crazy, it's like called Sunshine of Your Wub, crazy low end kind of track, kind of EDM like.
Clean.
Right, clean, but it goes between 24 and 40 hertz. And I played that back on some larger bookshelves. That's the Fire. It has a 7-inch torrent driver in it. Bridged M4 amp. And I mean, people's eyes were as big as saucers because they're like, where's the subs? Like, what are you doing? Where's the trick? What's the trick? What do you got?
Yep.
Maybe that's more impressive, right? Because you can bring
the factor.
Right, the jump factor. Because when they heard the bigger tower on the monoblocks, like, yeah, that was a better presentation. It's the bigger speaker. It's the better amps. But when I showed them our more practical amplifier on a pair of really great monitor speakers, they were just like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And of course, I played Eric Clapton and things that image nice, and that was really good. But when that track came on, it had real punch and real, pants shaking, solid 30 hertz and below content.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's the trick? Guys were like trying to pick up the speaker and look underneath, like if there was another woofer.
Right.
What's the trick? And I said, hey, good speaker, robust, tons of power. I just put my hand on it. This is a lot of power. This is like 600 plus watts bridged by 2. And they're like, oh, really? Like now that power is attainable, you can do that cool stuff, and that speaker can handle it. So it made it a really fun presentation.
Yeah, and that effect is just something that not a lot of people can experience firsthand.
Well, and the reason I brought that was, a pair of iridiums and a tungsten, that's, $46K in electronics retail, right? And it sounds like it's 46 to 100K in electronics. It sounds awesome. But not everybody can do that. So I brought an M4. Those are about $4,000 retail. You bridge it. Now you have an astonishing 2-channel presentation at a price point that's a lot more attainable. And like we had it plugged into our tungsten preamp, and that was really great. But you could plug that into all those, a Node or a Lumen, streamer DAC or a Hi-Fi Rose. Yeah, there's so many things. A WIM Pro, right? I mean, I could list them for days. There's probably 10 good devices that you could plug into that M4, plug into a speaker like the Totem. That set of monitors, they were like, I don't know, 7, 8K a pair, something like that. Mm-hmm. You're 4 for the amp. That's a really good, $12,000, $13,000 entire system with a streamer.
With an insane level of performance.
Insane level of performance, It's not what people are expecting. I've shown you that driver, right?
Yeah.
So you when you throw the juice to it, it's a beast. And that's why I had a guy like jump back, like he thought the Kool-Aid man was bust out of the wall between the speakers. And he was that guy afterwards, picking it up, looking for things. And we talked about the amp. And, a week later, he emails me off my business card, where can I get one of those amps? He got the amp and liked the amp a lot. Then he messages again, and he's like, hey, so where's my best dealer for those speakers? And I referred him to somebody in the Northeast. And so now I think he just kind of duplicated that setup.
Yeah.
He dug it, he duplicated it. Like I said, it's an experience-based thing. He had no idea monitors could do that. He had no idea an amp at that price point could do it,
Yeah, why reinvent the wheel? You've already matched it.
Right. That's right.
So as a speaker and amp company, just as, again, on consumer side, I look at rooms at a show as mainly being about whatever speakers are in there, or at least the speaker brand, right?
Right.
How do you guys, as a non-speaker company, approach going to a show? Do you partner up with somebody ahead of time, or is there people that you've already worked with, or is there a company that you want to pair your stuff with? What's the mindset there as a corporation?
Well, that's a good question. Coming from the dealer side of things, I already had relationships with vendors that I liked working with. At the Dallas show, we kind of had 3 rooms. We had a suite where we had those Menger speakers set up. We had 2 rooms. One of them was ACURUS electronics, and we had Totem stuff in there. And we moved the metals around. And then on the ARAGON room, we predominantly had Dynaudio Confidence 50s with the REL subs. And, sometimes I would hook up the Element metals in there, but most of the time that was Confidence 50s. Most of the time the other room was Element metals. Those are 2 brands that I have a lot of experience with as a dealer. I already know the people. They're good people. We've done shows together. So like at CEDIA, I was doing some interesting things, and not this year, but the year before, we had our own room, Sound Room 9. We had all the surround speakers in the layout with Totem, but I had 12 Dynaudio core subs. Each one of those has 4 tins in it.
Oh, wow.
So I had 48 10-inch woofers in that room.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, but I wasn't really doing it so much for the pressure. I wanted to have it where I could have my 4 subgroups the way I like to do it, and I could show people how really properly integrated subwoofers could convey, like, that Blade Runner 2049 track where, the eyeball opens, rumble for days, and then you see the shuttle go overhead, right? Like, whatever, what do they call it? The spinner. That's what they call the car, right?
Yep.
But fun fact, if you look at the dash, it says Peugeot. That's not a brand you see every day, but alternate Blade Runner universe, we all drive Peugeots. Anyway, And TWA still exists in Pan Am. But joking aside, when that car, or whatever you want to call it, spinner, goes overhead, you felt like the bass pressure went from the back of the room to the front.
Oh, wow.
But it doesn't. Like in our processor, LFE is all the same channels. When you really get that stuff integrated right, and you have a subwoofer that has good propagation delay, and there's a bunch, I'm not going to get in like favorites right now, but for that show, I use those. And all the speakers in the layout were the Totem Element Metals, Element Wood, Tribe 5s. They all have the Torrent drivers. And the way it was calibrated, that was conveyed to you that went overhead. Or like we played that Mission Impossible scene with the choppers chasing each other. When you felt that of the blades from the chopper in the Atmos speakers.
I don't think I've seen that one yet.
Okay, we'll watch that scene. It's good.
Okay.
And it felt like that was above you. But the ceiling speakers were cut at 80 hertz. The subs were recreating that. When you have enough subs and nothing's working hard and calling attention to itself, good time domain performance, you can enjoy that kind of effect, right? So the interesting thing was we had a room that had Dynaudio subs, Totem speakers, ACURUS and ARAGON electronics. And then when we did 2-channel demos, just kind of depending on, because CD is more of a dealer show. So if a dealer came in and said, hey, I'm a Totem dealer, let's check out ARAGON, I would hook up the ARAGON to the Totem speakers. If they were a Dynaudio dealer, I'd hook it up to the Confidence speakers. I just moved 2 wires. There you go. It was a completely separate setup. So you're asking how stuff works. You know people that are good to work with, good vendors, and you'll see that we do a lot of shows with Totem. Kind of like some other manufacturers, you can't always see them together. Some of them are owned by the same company, like Mac and Sonus Faber, but you would always see dealers put Mac with B&W, right? That was always something the dealers did. Magnolia did it a bunch. But it shows whatever's defined sound group they're going to exhibit together. Phil Callan and Name are the same company. At this moment in time, we don't make speakers, but, we kind of go with a partner we have a good relationship with.
Gotcha. So in your theater there, I know you've said that you've got your speakers pulled out into a pretty much circle. Obviously, we're both into 2-channel sound. How much do you think you're losing not being in a just dedicated 2-channel space? How would your speaker arrangement change?
I'm not losing anything from the 2-channel side. I'm doing it the other way. What I'm losing is if my room was not trying to be a theater, I'm not giving up anything in the 2-channel realm. But for the theater realm, I'm giving up not being able to have a bigger screen. Because the way my speakers are pulled out, my screen's 120 diagonal. Even right now, if you go into the rightmost seat, you see a little bit of the right speaker blocking some of the screen. So I'm compromising the viewing angle for the sake of having ideal 2-channel performance. My room is like 2 channels first, home theater viewing later. But home theater sound is still fantastic. But where I'm sacrificing is, I've got 4 seats. I have an offset 4-seat single row theater. So it's 1 row, but the seat I sit in is the middle seat. It's the sweet spot. I have a seat to my left, and I have 2 to my right. You have to have a walkway. So that rightmost seat is a little bit obscured by a speaker.
Gotcha.
So that's the compromise. I'm compromising my viewing angle for 2-channel performance. I could move the speakers apart and tow them in more and solve that problem, but then my 2-channel experience would not be as good.
Gotcha. How many feet back are you from your screen?
So my so when I do my calibration, where the MLP microphone is, majority listening position, is about 11 feet from the screen.
Okay, so
I'm sorry. It's 11 feet from the face of the center channel. It's probably 12 and a half from the screen.
Okay. That's still a very nice immersive screen, so I can see why you wouldn't want to.
So, I'll take that back. So it's 11 feet from the face of the center, 12 and a half to the screen, and the left and right speakers are only about 8.8, 9 feet, something like that, about 9-ish feet, because like I said, they're closer to you. The face of the left speaker is like 47 inches from the wall behind it, but the speaker is like 1.5 feet deep.
Gotcha.
So, there's more than 2 feet behind the speaker.
Yep.
I've got them way out. I've got my nice equilateral kind of triangle set up. And for 3 seats, you still get a good viewing angle.
That makes sense.
So I would say it's kind of 2-channel first, theater audio is not sacrificed, but theater video is slightly sacrificed.
Good trade-off.
Yeah, I think so. Audio first. I mean,
absolutely, audio first.
That was the shocking thing for me was, I go back to the dealer days. So many people were like lighting, video, audio. I'm like, what? Like, how can you do that? And it's like, I do Savant. We can have some fun with some lighting, but come on, audio. Like, you go over a budget. Let's say they had $200,000 to spend, which sounds like a lot of money, right?
It's not.
They were willing to spend $100 on like lighting and trim.
Yeah.
And the rest of it had to fit in what was left. I'm like,
oh, that's terrible.
Well, I mean, it made a good-looking room, right?
Well, maybe if you're talking whole house lighting, including shades and security. And
no, I'm talking about in one room, like where you're doing the fiber optic, star ceiling, you're doing columns. We did a Star Wars theme room runtime where you had these columns that kind of look like the bulkheads and like a, like a Corellian ship, like AKA Star Destroyer, like the bay when you see the Millennium Falcon in there. You know what I mean? Like the bulkheads that come up. Anyway, so we did that. There was, strip lighting behind it. It's all controlled. We've got the, the ceiling effects, things like that. That was where the majority of the money went in the room. You're building those plastic frames, stretching cloth. There's six figures in that stuff.
I can see that.
What's left for speakers? It was like that room was a 724.
Do you think those types of clients in general are more concerned with the theme, or are they hardcore, I want the perfect sound kind of people?
I mean, it just depends. What's ironic is I always tell people it's cheaper to do it right the first time, right?
Learn that the hard way.
That same guy, we did the room. It looked beautiful. And, a year goes by and everything's working good and all that. I think it was about projectors. For some reason, he came to see me, and I showed him different speakers. He's like, well, what would it take to get these speakers into my cinema? And I'm like, well,
money.
kind of a lot of remodeling money now. It would have been cheaper to put these in the first time.
Yeah.
Right? And have two more. We ended up doing it, but, if you looked at the cost of initial room plus renovation versus doing it right the first time, I think, easily 25, 30 grand was wasted.
Ouch.
Well, think about it. You're going to lose money on the speakers you take out.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. And the guy had this really great realization. I think he spent like $300,000 or $400,000 on his pool. Which thing do you think he uses more, the pool or the cinema?
You reminded me of my next door neighbor.
The first summer, he and his family used the crap out of the pool. They just used it.
Yep.
The next summer, they just didn't touch it.
Yep.
Right. It's like the cinema is really what everybody spends their time in. And that's another thing. I used to think, the industry is starting to have a lot of like powered towers. That's kind of a
that trend like 10 years ago, and it just died, didn't it?
I wouldn't say it died. I mean, like Dyna Audio and Totem have that, and that was one of the reasons why it's like an alternative to the powered tower is what I kind of showed at Exponus, like a moderately priced amp with a moderately priced source. You can hide this. A lot of those sources have HDMI ARC, and you can have a clean setup of two speakers. You're like, where are you going with this? Like a lot of these guys, they get that killer cinema. They find that sometimes like their kids just want to use it with their kids' friends over. They're watching whatever they're watching. And it's like, what, dude comes home from work. What's he going to do now? Right. Or him and his wife want to relax. Now, all of a sudden there's a living room system. It could be kind of a lifestyle system with like just 2.0, but you want to have HDMI ARC for convenience, or maybe it's a cool 2-channel system in his office. But, I feel like stereo is kind of making a reemergence almost as like an add-on.
That would be really cool because doing it right, I mean, I have had so many occasions where I will either bring in new speakers or, like happened with the Muse, plug something in, and all of a sudden I have that experience of I'm hearing something new. Now I have to go back and listen to all my other stuff, and it's, really cool. People don't have that experience, even with great headphones, which are very popular today. It's just a new thing to have. Wow, that's stereo? I don't think people understand.
Well, and that's why I brought up, there's certain songs, like back in the day, they used to use Q sound. That was an encoder.
Yeah.
Like it was an analog thing, but it was almost like running a plug-in in Logic or something now, or Pro Tools. But Madonna used that. A bunch of people did. Right. now you've got that track, Francine 13's, what is it? Can't think of the name right now. She has a track that kind of moves back and forth and all that stuff. It's really fun. You've got that chocolate chip trip from Tool. That's a fun track. Stuff just literally goes around in a circle from 2 speakers.
Yep.
The faster your speaker, the faster your amplifier, generally the more convincing we can make that imaging, right? Because you have 2 ears. You know if something's in front of you or behind you based on timing.
Mm-hmm.
So the more speed we can get in the amp and the speaker, the more we can put that back together for your ears to discern, to tell your brain where that object is in space. You're using the LSIMs, right? So you've got a ring radiator tweeter, you've got like a 3-inch mid, you've got a lot of drivers that are very light on their feet.
Yeah.
That tower I was telling you about from Axpona, that Element Metal, it's very light on its feet in a different way. It's a 2-way. But the woofer just has tons of magnetic strength in a very light cone. The Dyna Audio Confidence speaker, it's a 3-way, but the mid-range drivers, the cones are so light, you put one in your hand, you just can't even feel it. It's just insanely light. So it's like there's a lot of ways to get to that speed factor with like that lightweight cone, very powerful motor. And to take that a step further, if the electronics can have a very fast slew rate, that's why I like the M4 and M8 amps. If you bridge them, it's not just to get more power. You take that slew rate from like 50 volts per microsecond, you bridge it, now it's 100. It's twice as fast now. Even if you don't need the power, even if you're running on some tiny little monitor speakers, going to 100 volts per microsecond is going to give you better imaging cues.
And to be clear for everyone watching, when you're talking speed, you mean the ability for the cone to physically move, change direction, and stop without any overshoot.
Yeah, as a whole ecosystem, it would be the cone. But if we're looking at the amp alone, and like you were looking out on the oscilloscope, the slew rate is the voltage the amp can rise to in a certain amount of time. So time is the x-axis and voltage is the y. But in a system with speakers, you're right, it's the whole thing. So it's like if you have an impulse, like kick drum, that's the time of, coming in a signal, cone moving out, cone moving back in. The faster that can all happen, which is a combination of slew rate and damping on the electronic side and a factor of like BL versus cone weight. Say what?
Oh, sorry. I thought I muted my mic. I was just turning
on
the fan. Sorry.
And on the speaker side, it's, BL, which is motor strength versus the cone weight. So when we get all that stuff right, we have a fast speaker and a fast amp, you can really get that amazing, those amazing imaging cues. And that's what, makes, here's the difference. Key Largo, that's another good track, right? There's a plane that kind of flies overhead. 2 speakers.
I've heard of that one.
Okay, Boris Blank, he's one of the guys from Yellow. He has this really cool track called Key Largo.
Okay.
Play that one. On good electronics and good speakers, you'll get this effect that a plane kind of comes at you and goes over your head. Mm-hmm. Your stuff is really bananas and really, really good. You can get up out of your chair and go stand like 3 feet over and 3 feet back, play the track again, and still get the effect. Mm. That's kind of a different one. So at Axpona, I had some fun with that. I was demonstrating to people that let's have some musical chairs. Get up, sit in the chair next to you. Don't sit in the sweet spot. Stand up, stand in the back of the room. If this effect still happens, then I want you to go home and try it. Huh. And if you can't reproduce it at home, something in this room is worth upgrading to. Now, I know that's a bad way to like Billy Mays, sale it.
But wait, like, there's more.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, this is cool. That's a really cool demo. It's like, because some things you could play them back to back and you could argue that like, maybe I like this better. Maybe this is warmer. Maybe this is more fun. But when you get an effect or don't get an effect, that's sort of black and white, right? That's an on or off. That's not a maybe. That's not, I think it was better. That was, that doesn't work, right?
I'm sorry.
You're looking at
I'm having a panic attack right now thinking that my mic is not broadcasting to anyone but you.
Uh-oh.
If anyone on chat can just tell me, can you hear me, you would stop my heart from jumping out of my throat right now.
Uh-oh.
I know you can hear me.
Well, I can't see the chat window, so I have no idea if anybody says anything.
Well, let me read a question anyway. Mellow Chump says, I'm going to have to paraphrase this. Okay, he said I can hear you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is it not safe for work? Is it One of those.
No, he's using letters instead of words, so I'm just trying to.
I got you.
How do your watt per channel rating compare in real world? Okay, he's asking how do power ratings compare paper spec versus in your system, I think.
Okay. So that's easy enough. So we promise a conservative number because we can pretty much guarantee that is a achievable metric. You take an M8 amplifier and give it a dedicated 20 amp circuit, it will outperform the spec that we put on that piece of paper in the box. And if you go even further and you give that rascal 240 volts instead of 120, you'll get insane power. You'll get 1,000 watts by 4 bridged and all kinds of crazy stuff if you give it 240 volts. But in a realistic world, 120 volt dedicated circuit, you're going to get 250 by 8. You're going to get 400 plus at 4. Even on a 15 amp circuit, you're going to get very close to that. I think you're going to get about 210 all channels driven at 8 ohms. That's a realistic power you'll actually get in your room. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is what ohms are your speakers. Yes. Some speakers say they're 8 ohms. They might be 2.7. They might be 12.
And people don't realize that ohm rating is not a one specific number. That number they give you is at that one point that somebody picked.
Right. Like I've got a speaker I was looking at the other day. I did a sweep on it, and like the tuning frequency of the port, you get sort of a dip, right? You can see where the port tuning frequency is, and at that frequency, it was about 4 ohms. But at 60 hertz, that speaker went down to 1 point something ohms, and then kind of everywhere else it was about 6. And so it was mostly a 6 ohm speaker, but at the tuning frequency it was 4, and it had a dip to like 1.7.
And explain to people really quick the effect of the ohm rating on an amp.
Well, so, wattage is Ohm's law. The lower ohm rating of the speaker, the more current is going to go into the wire and eventually the voice coils of the driver, so the more wattage you get. So if an amplifier puts out anything, it puts out voltage, and depending on the ohm or impedance of the speaker, we will get more or less watts. So at 2.83 volts coming out of an amplifier into an 8 ohm speaker, that's 1 watt. Now here's where things get really fun is if I take the same 2.83 volts and I put a 4 ohm speaker on it, that's actually like 2 watts. If I take the same same 4 ohm speaker and I put 2 volts into it, that's now 1 watt. So voltage can be different wattage based on the impedance of the speaker. That's why it's when you're looking at speakers and you look at a number that says like sensitivity, that's an interesting number. It's like, well, what is that at? Is that at 1 watt? Is that 1 watt taking into account the impedance of the speaker, or is it just like a 2.83 volt thing? Because if you say a speaker is, let's say, 100 dB at 2.83 volts, but the speaker's average impedance is below 4 ohms, that speaker's really 97 dB at 1 watt because it's really at 2 volts, right? So I know that's a lot of information to throw out there for some, but like that makes the playing field not exactly even. If everybody standardizes on 2.83 volts, that's okay as a standard, but depending on the ohm load of that speaker, it may be getting more than 1 watt. It could be getting 2, it could be getting less. I mean, if it's 16 ohms, it needs 4 volts to be 1 watt.
Yeah, that goes back to the all channels driven. I don't care what they would pick as a standard. I just wish there was an industry standard.
Yeah, like if I wanted to come up with a super flattering number, if I just did every other channel on the amp, because the amp has 4 power supplies in it, I'd come up with more wattage than that all channels driven, 210-ish watts.
Yeah.
We'd probably get 250 or 300 maybe. But, in real world, I can kind of guarantee that a lot of times a movie's going to need 5 out of 8 of those channels, maybe all 8 out of 8, but often at least 5 of the 8, right?
Mm-hmm. So bridging off of that and talking about power in general, let's say you're Joe Schmo at home and you've got your, not even entry level, your mid-range audio video receiver. So you've got your processor and amplifier in one box and you've got preamp out. What should people be determining? Hey, is it time for me to go to external amplification? What should they be listening to decide that for themselves?
Well, I don't know that there's ever a time to not do that.
Well, yeah.
I mean, unless you're talking about like $44 speakers. I mean, any decent speaker, I don't mean like really great, I just mean anything decent can generally benefit from more clean power. And the cool thing is, if let's say a guy bought an M8, but right now he has some kind of AVR.
Yep.
And so he's going to take some channels that he can offload off of the AVR. Let's say it's left, center, right, surround sides. Now he's going to take his AVR in the channels that were powering Atmos and the surround backs are going to be sort of unloaded, because now that one power supply in that AVR that was good for, let's say, 450, 500 watts can now focus all of its power to those channels, right? When that thing was trying to drive 9 or 11 channels, that 500 watt power supply is now divided by 11. That's like not even 50 watts, right?
So let's say he's sitting there at home and, he's got his Best Buy set up and it sounds great. What's the, not sales pitch, but what's the practical reason that they would at all want more power?
So, I mean, it kind of, in an honest point of view, if the room can, if it's anything bigger than this office, it takes a surprising amount of juice to get kind of, that's what everybody's chasing, right? Some kind of reference level. If we're playing John Wick,
yes.
We want a gunshot to maybe be sort of a realistic gunshot level. Like maybe not 140 peak decibels, but we want some pretty loud peaks.
Yeah, you don't want to have to wear muffs.
It's shocking, even with a high efficiency speaker, it's shocking how hard that is to do with an AVR. So, if you have any kind of tower speaker, even if they're moderately priced, an amp, at least on the front, left, center, right speakers, is going to be an immediate upgrade. Even if it's a pretty modest price speaker. What was that Hulk speaker they used to sell the heck out of at Best Buy? Came out about the same time as the L800s. You know what I'm talking about? They were like $500 a piece.
I think you're thinking of either the Elite series, something with the E, or the TSI or the RSI.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, there's whole clips, you name it, stuff at like that $500, $800 a piece price point. If that's where your speakers are at, your efficiency's probably in the low 90s, maybe even those clips, probably 92, 93 dB at 1 watt. If you want some good SPL and your receiver has pre-outs, that next logical step is an amp. Get an M8 now, and later down the road, if your budget allows, that processor's the next step, and if the amp is 8 channels, that'll get you most of the channels. You can add an M4 and, then speakers. And if you're mostly theater. If you're doing a lot more 2-channel stuff, you can upgrade that left, center, right speaker array to get your 2-channel game improved at the same time, and then get your way into the processor and whatnot. But I mean, you can tell me your own journey. I'm interested in this. I'm assuming you started with AVRs and worked your way into separates.
Oh yeah.
How did you feel like the bubble changed for you going into the separates?
The bubble has been very interesting because that has changed multiple times, doing different things, and it seems like it all built on one another. I don't think I ever had a point where I went backwards with a change, but just looking at the last one here, I went from a JBL SDP 55, and it sounded fantastic, super happy with that here. And just changing to the Muse, the whole soundstage immediately and dramatically changed just from plugging those in. No room correction. I mean, I'm not talking...
So same speaker, same amp.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was the only shift. Now, I didn't know if it was a limitation of the SDP or if it's just that the Muse was better or a combination thereof. But it's been interesting because I have, like you said earlier, it's cheaper to do it right the first time. Yeah, I have never done anything right the first time, ever. So my journey has been spending 10 times as much and changing things 5, 6, 7 times before I end up, okay, this is my end game for blah blah blah.
Right.
But the bubble was something where I thought couldn't get any better. It sounded great. I'd play the Atmos demos. I got a sphere of sound. Okay, great. And then something else changes. I'm like, fuck, that is much better.
Well, so I like that relative comparison, because if you think about what I'm suggesting, start with an amp. when your budget allows, go to the processor. You're kind of telling anybody tuning into this might watch it later. This will be available later, right? Just some video on YouTube, right? So somebody can understand, what do you get when you go from receiver feeding amp to processor feeding amp? That different decoding, that different gain structure, that different preamp quality changes the bubble. The system's not going to get louder, but the fidelity is going to increase and things are going to change, right? And I guess the best way I can explain it for me, I started this, well before my company in 15, but by 15 I was in the separates. I was doing, Theta, Datasat, I've done Trinovs, I've done all of the processors out there before I kind of focused on ACURUS, right? And I felt like what made ACURUS such a high fidelity product, and this is actually why I wanted to have that call with Rick. I was like, dude, what's the secret sauce? Let's talk about it. I said, there's something different. I hooked up this processor, and it was sonically competitive and doing well against $20,000 two-channel preamps. They were $20,000 analog pieces that I had. So I had this demo inventory of all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to name other brands because I'm not going to do any of that. But $20,000, hook it up, and I was like, wow, this ACT4 is really holding its own. You go back and forth, and because I was doing the ACT4 analog in, analog out. You can do that on our products because the volume controls an analog realm. The mute and the ACT4, the volume controls a 100-step analog realm, attenuator. When you got 10 decibels of analog gain available to you. When you're decoding Atmos, or if you're coming in digital from, like, let's say a CD player or streamer, the DSP section of that unit always runs at 0 dBFS. A lot of the competition, you'll see wording in their advertisements saying something like hybrid gain structure or, digital. Like, we do all of our attenuation analog. And I think that all those little things that I can, I won't go too far into detail, but that's a little bit of the secret sauce, or
of course,
how this is made, or however you want to say it. And that's why these things sound so good. That's what, how you get better imaging from better electronics? Now you're getting that in your theater. Because there is imaging in your theater, from the front left speaker to the surround left to
which is precisely what shocked me. And I, like you, was like, what is going on? Because something changed that is so big that, again, I'm looking for, is there something wrong I had with the JBL?
No, and look, that's a good piece. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, there's a lot of good things out there. That JBL piece is shared some engineering with, like, Arcane stuff. It's a good piece. But when you get to this level of electronics, you experience that same imaging that makes your two-channel setup just flat disappear and become a soundstage and experience that same relationships between your left speaker and your surround left. And so now you have sounds just smoothly moving in the soundstage.
And I especially noticed that on the dedicated Atmos demos. They'd always been really effective in demoing the Atmos effect, but the realism of the 3D bubble, like you said, just imaged into multi-channel, where I always had that in two-channel, especially on things like Q-Sound, which are, like cheating. But that in multi-channel was really amazing, because I always thought that you didn't need anything special for multi-channel because you had the speakers and all you were dealing with is phase and distance and whatever. But no, it made a tangible difference. But going back to my journey, one thing I'd done a couple times was just add an amp partially to a receiver, like to offload the left, center, right. And what I noticed just from doing that every single time was increased dynamics. Like, not just playing it loud. I don't actually play things all that loud. If I go to reference level, that's louder than I hardly, that's just not what I enjoy. So
yeah, you do that for a minute.
Hearing better dynamics at lower volumes was like, that's cool.
Right. And I think that goes back to what I said in the beginning, where when you have really good dynamics, the experience at any volume is kind of less fatiguing and just more enjoyable.
Okay, I can see that.
Like, let's say...
Just a tip for anyone testing dynamics. This one scene, and it doesn't do it with my speakers, coincidentally, or not coincidentally, but funny enough, the only... Not only, I am, I have another. The most I've heard this effect were out of a pair of freaking Klipsch reference Premiers. where they made me jump out of my seat. It was a very early scene in Dunkirk, and it's the opening. They're lurking around the town center, and he goes over the wall, and they fire on him. That initial gunshot, it goes from silence to just a gunshot. I jumped out of my seat. That is the most dynamic scene I've ever heard speakers deliver. It's insane. If you want to test,
I'll check that out. I'm guilty of going on Amazon and like scouring the thing for 4K discs. I still haven't watched Dune. I haven't watched Dunkirk, but I
haven't watched part 2 of Dune yet either.
I haven't seen either of them. Everybody tells me they're great, but you know what's bad? I've watched like 3 scenes over and over because everybody wants to see them. So I've seen these scenes. They mean nothing to me because I haven't seen the movie, but they're good, right?
I don't even remember part 1. I saw it when it first came out on streaming. I've not rewatched the disc version at all, but I haven't seen the series. I don't have much time to watch stuff anymore.
Right. Well, with content and kind of pushing the boundaries, I think I know what you're talking about. That Amaze demo from Dolby.
Yeah.
That's a good one for testing the bubble because there's like bird or something that goes around you.
Yes, it is.
And some decoders will do it where you can kind of tell, like, okay, center channel, right speaker, surround right, surround back right. You can just sort of kind of hear it go speaker, speaker. And when the imaging is really good passing off between channels, you just feel like that
speakers are
smoothly, even if you don't have the front wide.
Mm-hmm.
I heard another product out there. I won't say who makes it, but there's another one out there that if you don't have a front wide and that sound transitions from, like, let's say the front right speaker to the surround right, you hear the bird like gap, the wings flapping, right? There's a gap. There's something going on where like it meant to send something to that wide that doesn't exist. And so you just hear that gap. And that was the coolest thing is you can take a Muse or an ACURUS, take them all the way down to like a 5-channel setup. And so long as you have the mode in auto, it'll up mix or down mix however needed. So regardless of your bed channel layout, you'll get that smooth travel of the object around the room, regardless of whether it's 4 channels, 5, 7, or 9. You're going to get a smooth transition of sound.
Nice.
I'm not going to say we have the most bells and whistles, but we've got like what counts, right? It's like the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
It's got it where it counts.
Real quick, another test scene that you may not have seen that blew me away. I haven't even listened to it yet on the Muse, but this scene alone is recorded so well. It's in, what's it called? A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the Mr. Rogers movie.
Okay.
It's recorded, one of the last ones in DTSX. And it has cues outside the room so far that I've paused the movie and gotten up because I thought something fell in the kitchen or somebody was making noise in the bedroom. And it's, in the movie, just that clean and that good. There's one particular scene, I'm not going to spoil them all, but there's one, it's late in the movie. People are walking into the set that they're filming, so it's real quiet. And there's this noise, won't tell you where, but it is 20 feet to your right. I mean, it is not even in your room. It is so cool.
In the 2-channel realm, there's a song, how is it Roger Waters? Waters. Yep. That's right. Yep, there's one where it's like a dog barking, right? Yep. A dog barking way over here.
Yep.
And then you hear a TV change channels.
Over here. There's one behind
your head. So there's a track that I was playing the other day that kind of reminded me of that. I'd have to look up the name of it, but there's a static that comes in. And if you've ever played a record, you hear that occasional pop.
Yeah.
The pop is not to your side. It's like back into the left. Like you think you back did it, but you're listening in 2.0.
Huh.
Like that is some like gnarly imaging. James Blake is the artist, but I can't remember the name of the track. It's like every minute the track has this bass sound that comes in and it kind of moves up and down in frequency. Mm-hmm. And there's like a snap or like a pop kind of behind you. See if for you it's like to your back left.
I'll check it out.
And even kind of up. You sort of get a soundstage height out of it. When the
I don't have any kind of height in my rears because I'm pretty much
against the wall. It doesn't matter. You're listening to it in 2 channel.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. And you're using the M8 bridge, right?
Yeah.
I think you'll get it. I've had LSIMs. I know the amp bridge. I think you'll get this. I think it'll be conveyed in your system. So just, shoot me a message and see what you get.
Okay. Got a couple questions here. This one would be a show in and of itself, and there's going to be a lot that just can't be said business to business. Mellow Chump wants to know, do cables now he doesn't specify which cables, so he might mean interconnect, speaker cables, power cables. Do cables really matter, or do cheap ones from Amazon do?
That answer is it depends.
Yeah.
Right? It depends. I'll give you an example. Like hooking a speaker up to an amp.
Okay.
There's a lot of variance there to geometry, to cable. You can get better results, but for the most part, this is a pretty forgiving cable. Here's an example of where a cable really, really matters. I revealed earlier that I have this decent vinyl setup, right? And I've got this really nice phono preamp. And the guy that makes the phono preamp, I consider him to be a good friend. His name's Daniel Wright, Mod Wright. Started out like modifying Oppo players and eventually started making his own equipment. And so I've got this tube phono pre in my system. And he made the mistake of telling me how much gain it has. He's like, oh, you've got the S. It's hot rodded. It's really cool. And I don't even need this much gain because my cartridge is like 0.4 millivolts output. So I need about 70 dB. But I did that audiophile thing you do. You just want to see what happens, right? So you can go all the way to 80. And so I go to 80 and it changes what the step-up transformer you have. It's MC step-up transformer. And I noticed that I was getting induced noise, which is not a ground loop, but you get that kind of noise induced into that cable there's a 5-pin dent on the bottom of my tone arm. And it comes out and it converts to RCAs at the phono pre. And if you move that cable around, you'll get a louder or quieter noise floor, depending on what's around it, like EMI from transformers, or it could be a lighting ballast or God knows what.
Huh.
I recently changed that cable out. I won't mention the brand I changed out from, but I will mention the one I put in. I changed out from what I had to Cardis. I put in their clear phono, and regardless of whether you think that cable sounds better or not, I can tell you this happened. I can take that cable now and I could lay it on top of my power amp and there's no noise. That cable is shielded like you can't imagine. I've not dug into if it's because the geometry or because shielding or because what, but in that instance, cables absolutely do matter because you have this extremely high gain preamp. You have an extremely low voltage signal from that cartridge, and you're trying to maintain integrity between these two devices without succumbing to interference, right?
So that's more of an equipment match than this cable alone is better than that cable. I mean, there's certainly...
I don't know. I would say that hardest cable is better than brand X, period, for rejecting interference. Whether, we want to argue about like sound quality or tonality or whatever, I'll say, hey, this is a great design cable. But for rejecting interference, which is, again, that's one of those does it do it or not sort of things. It's not opinion now.
Yeah.
It absolutely is pretty much, I have just awesome noise floor now. It's insane. I can go all the way to the hottest gain, which I don't need, by the way, but I can, and nothing. It's insane from changing the cable. Now, like interconnects between a preamp and an amp, they can have similar effects, certain interconnects. So like the right way to make an interconnect is some kind of wire geometry. And then ideally you have some kind of shield, and it should only be connected on one end. And one end of that, the sleeve of that RCA, usually on the preamp, is grounded, and you drain interference. So there's properly made interconnects, and there's some interconnects that are made sort of weird. That kind of stuff makes a difference. But if you're talking about speaker cable, premium cables can make a difference, but you got to sit down, you got to listen to them. So that question is not black and white, but sometimes the answer is black and white. And with cables, man, go listen to them. If you think it makes a difference in your system, buy the cable. If you don't buy the cable.
Mellow, let us know if you got a specific cable that you're considering changing or something.
Yeah.
Mr. Pink Puffball wants to know, how easy is the setup of the Muse and speakers for someone who isn't very tech savvy?
So I would say it's pretty easy. Navigating the unit's really easy. Like my kid can look at the touch screen and I'm like, hey, turn up the center channel. She knows what a setting icon looks like. When she was 7, she could hit that. She could hit the speaker icon. She could find a center channel because it graphically matched up to the room and changed level on it. That part's really easy. There is one thing of information you need to know to run Aspect, but I would say you need this to run any room correction. You have to have some knowledge about the rest of your equipment. By that, I mean your powered sub. everybody's powered sub has a different propagation delay depending on who makes the sub. Whether it's like, I think you have Power Sound Audio, or if I have Rel or Bag End or, Paradigm or whatever the brand of the subwoofer is, Dyne Audio, they all have different propagation delays. It depends on if they have DSP in the front end. If they don't have DSP, how fast is the DSP? How many bits is it? Where I'm going with this is if your subwoofer has, I'm just going to make up a number, 12 milliseconds of propagation delay, in order to time align it to your left speaker, you're going to set your left, let's say your left speaker is 9 feet away. 9 feet's like 8 milliseconds. But your subwoofer's right next to that speaker and it has 12 milliseconds of propagation delay. You need to set that to like 20 so that they match up. There's a buffer in the processor that works all that stuff out for you. So if you know the propagation delay of the subwoofer, which some of these things you can find online. For example, with Rel, they mentioned this is the speed of our filter. What they're really telling you is this is the propagation delay of our subwoofer. So like
and you can also measure it very easily and free with REW.
Well, that's what I was about to say. If you have like RemiQ Wizard or like I use fuzz measures,
Takes it 2 minutes.
You can find this out because let's say I put my microphone a meter in front of the sub. When it sends its measurement impulse, it'll tell me, hey, that's 2.7 meters. Well, I know my microphone's actually at a meter, so that extra 1.7 meters is the equivalent propagation delay of the system. Not, you know what I'm saying? I only have 1 meter of distance. There's 1.7. It's like XLR to cone. You know what I'm saying? It's electronics propagation delay. I wish websites that tested subwoofers would just publish the propagation delay to help end users. Maybe I'll start publishing that stuff someday as a hobby. Who knows? But it doesn't make the subwoofer good or bad necessarily. I like low propagation delay. Like I'll say like Rel, for example, analog front end propagation delays are like around 4 milliseconds or better. Some of your DSP models could be 7, 8, 10, 12. It just depends on their design. You have to know that information. And once you know that, running aspect is like anything else. You just give it the distances. You know your propagation delay to offset that. You run through it. It calculates filters. It applies filters. That part's pretty easy. But you have to know that propagation delay. That's the part you got to figure out.
Yep.
At the very least, if you don't have the tools to measure it, what I would say is like pick one sub, hook up, let's say, sub X to the 2 speakers, and just work that number through the web UI until it blends the best with music, and then take note, what was that number? Play something that's like EDM with a repetitive bass hit, and when the subwoofer finally disappears, and like your right speakers are at 11 milliseconds and the sub's at 20, we now know its propagation delay is 9 milliseconds different than your left and right. You've solved that problem. That is the layman's way to do it, I guess.
Yeah, and that's really all it takes. Same thing with transducers. What you're looking for is for it to just, it's gone.
Right.
You don't want to notice that you have subs or you have Crosons or anything. You just want it to sound like the sound.
Right. Yep. And you've made a video on running through aspects. And I think you mentioned you RemiQ Wizard or something to figure out that propagation delay. Is that right?
Yeah, I did show how to measure that to find whatever you have.
So if you can't measure it, that simple stereo 2.1 listening test is a way to sort of just learn it. Yeah. But if you can measure it, you can get there with REW, fuzz measures, and a bunch of other things.
And if you have someone there to help you and they can just be tapping the button as you tell them up or down, it'll take you 30 seconds.
Right. I've gotten to where I pull it up on my phone in the web UI, and I'm not even looking at the phone, but I just I'll start with a high number, and I'll just click down, and that's what it sounds like. I'll look at and that's what it is.
I totally forget that web UI is there. I tended not to use it because it would freeze up. Sorry.
Yeah, so once we got the 3.3 and up on firmware, it's like rock solid. You can use that now, and it responds really fast. In fact, one of the favorite things I like to do with that is in our unit, if you want to single out a speaker to hear it by itself, so not only can you generate like a tone to a speaker, but let's say you want to just hear the sub. Like let's say you have a room rattle you're trying to figure out, you can just click on that channel and you can hit EXT instead of tone. A lot of people that have ACURUS and Muses haven't tried this yet. And whatever you're listening to will just get down mixed into that one sub or that center channel, whatever it is. And that'll help you troubleshoot room things. Like if you have rattles or buzzes or something you're trying to hone in.
Oh, boy.
That's a nice way to do that.
I went through that for about the first year that we were here in this house, because it was also during the time I was constantly upgrading, whether it was subs or processor or speakers
Right.
or everything. I mean, I was finding new things that were rattling and shaking and breaking and coming apart left and right. I have so many things customized, from the kitchen to the living room to doors to the whole fireplace. There is so much customized in here just to stop rattles.
Yeah, it got to where when I was installing home theater stuff and somebody already had an existing room and we weren't kind of starting from scratch, so we're not gluing drywall, we're not doing hanging rails or anything. I would just show up, you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you can buy a little box of a bunch of these little felt circles. Mm. And if somebody's already got like diffusers on their wall, but they've hung them on a cleat or something, by default, man, you're just lifting those up, slap, slap, you're putting those on everything. Yep. If they've already got their screen, pull their screen out. Because all these screens kind of hang on a cleat. Pull them out, slap those on there.
Yep.
That was like job one, was just use up all the felt discs and then see what you got left after that.
I've got it's a gas fireplace in Florida, which nobody in the history of Florida has ever used.
It's a feature.
Yes, it's a feature, and the wife will not let me remove it. I would love to remove it because it is literally built into the room. It's a specific option that whoever built this house put in this floor plan for nothing. Just looks pretty. I'll admit it looks pretty, I guess. But she's from New York, up north mentality, got to have a fireplace. Good for pictures is what she says. Anyway, the whole thing inside is nothing but sheet metal. The outside is tile and, marble and that kind of stuff. But you open the grates and it's just the thinnest sheet metal, like a barbecue. And
gotcha.
The whole thing just solid resonance. So what I ended up doing was, remember Dynamat back in car audio days?
Mm-hmm.
Now the whole thing is Dynamated.
Nice.
It worked. Can't use it as a fireplace, but it's quiet.
They probably make something high heat you could use for that, but what about, do they make some kind of glass door or anything you can put on it to keep the sound from getting in it and resonating it, or does that not make a difference?
It wasn't coming in. The glass doors are actually really heavy, fireproof doors, but it's a box. It's not actually built into the back wall. It's built out from the back wall in its own unit, so the sides of it are, where the subs are.
That's what was drumming. Okay, understood.
Yeah, so that whole thing.
Gotcha.
Another one that was, it took me a while to find it, and I had to use one of those digital scopes. The electrical conduit, it's got the power switch to ignite it on the side. They ran the electric conduit from the attic straight down the wall. The conduit itself was vibrating on a stud. So I had to cut a hole and get in there and secure it so it wouldn't be vibrating on the inside.
Yeah, if you're in this hobby or as a profession long enough, eventually you get to be passable at drywall repair.
Yeah.
Eventually you get there. Whether you want to be or not, you start calling a guy and eventually you're just doing it.
Mr. Pink says, thank you very much. That makes sense.
To which thing? The cable thing? Or
that was for setup.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, sorry, I kind of spiraled on the cable thing, but I will, to go back to that for 1 second, I will not be the guy that says cables are snake oil, but I'm not going to force them down anybody's throat. I'm going to say if your dealer or a friend recommends something, no harm in trying it. And if you like it, buy it. If you don't buy it.
I'm at the current point where I switch out a cable if there's a problem I need to solve, but I have never swapped anything to see if there's any sonic difference.
Gotcha.
And luckily, all my cables have no problems here, so.
Gotcha.
Now. I have had a couple, interestingly, this is something that maybe what would be causing it, or fixed it, I should say. With these Power Sound audio subs, they're using the Ice Power 2000-ish watt amps, and I had these in both the SDP 55 and what I had before that. Can't remember if I had them on a Marantz or a Yamaha, but everything before the Muse, they had a slight hum, so I had to turn down the crossover on the sub amp to get rid of it until it hit 130 or so. But with the Muse, still using RCA, still going through the same mini DSP box, dead silent. So it's actually the signal coming through to the sub out.
Yeah, so what's interesting about that is a lot of the industry has moved away from referencing ground. If you look at the back of Marantz, Anthem, all these processors and stuff, you'll see they have two-prong cords. Even if you put a three-prong cord on, look at the IEC jack, it's two-prong. That means double insulated. Mm-hmm. There's no earth ground to the chassis or to the ground pins on the XLRs. And that can make you more immune to a massive ground loop, but you can have a higher residual noise floor in some cases. So we have worked really hard to kind of honor ground. And, the Muse Act 4, they all have grounded cords, chassis ground, pin one on the XLRs, you name it. The grounding is industry standard. And internally, the unit is built around a star ground. So when you utilize ground correctly, you can actually get better results. But a lot of the industry has moved away from a grounded unit because, to be ground loop immune. But even in a system without a ground loop, you can have a slightly higher residual noise floor for other reasons.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like you probably avoid a couple tech support calls, but for the guy who's got everything hooked up right and doesn't have any issues, he's actually the one suffering slightly. But you, out of 100 people that just randomly plugged everything in, you're going to be less likely to have a ground loop, but, higher residual noise. So, ground is a weird thing where it's a simple concept, but to get it right in something like a processor receiver is a lot of layout expertise and a lot of careful considerations to really implement it correctly. So the simple concept, not hard to understand, but kind of hard to implement 100% right. We've worked really hard on it. Every time we look at the product, we're usually looking at what can we do in the firmware. We're not really looking at what are we doing with hardware. From that perspective, they're awesome. We're going to add new features. We're constantly developing stuff. Our development team is busy, but as far as the construction of the units, everything I've talked to you about, from doing volume in the analog realm, the proper grounding schemes, all that stuff is awesome.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I had a realization, I don't remember if it was at the show, but recently, that I had no idea the processor part of the industry was, it seems like it's 10% hardware and 90% software company.
Mm-hmm.
I just had no idea.
Well, and a lot of companies are paying to get a product from someone who specializes in making that product. I'm not going to say who, but like a lot of products are actually either made by or designed by the same person. Our product is 100% bespoke to us. So everything from the UI you see on the screen to what's going on under the hood, the analog output board, our main, we call it our Sys5. That's kind of like our unit's motherboard. I've got one down here. This big guy. This is all bespoke to us. You won't find this in another piece of hardware. These are all specific hardware designs, and so there's not going. As far as I can tell, there's not going to be an Act 5. The Act 4 will just continue to evolve. There can be a new HDMI board, there can be a new DSP board, but the foundation of that unit is as future-proof as it needs to be. So the name is not going to change. So to your point, we, our software development team's bigger than it's ever been. We've got some ambitious projects and things, and that's all important, but there is a hardware side of it. There could be a new format comes out, and we can do firmware upgrades to our DSP board, but if there needs to be a hardware upgrade, that's why that DSP goes in a socket. I can show you right here. These are sockets. It's also one. We actually have two on our unit. We're only using one, but we thought ahead. What if we need another? Well,
is the design intentional so that consumers can do these kinds of upgrades, or is it just for your dealer?
That's an awesome question. You could. There's nothing that difficult about doing the upgrades. Like the DSP board is 4 screws. Power the unit down, fully unplug it. 4 screws, take the card out, put the new card in, put the 4 screws back. That's easy, right?
Yep.
Why would you? Because if you send the unit back to the factory, which were pretty quick, I'll give you an example. I had a guy send in a ACURUS 16. That's like a 2016-17 era unit, okay? He sent that in recently to be hardware upgraded to an ACURUS 420. And when he sent that in, we received it towards the end of a week, like around Thursday, and we were shipping it back out the next Wednesday. It's pretty fast. So you're not down for too long. And the advantage to doing it that way is when that unit comes in for that upgrade. Now, that 16 to 20, that is an in-service upgrade. You're not going to do that one.
Warranty, aren't you?
The warranty restarts.
Oh, wow.
It's not that we would void your warranty. So, like, let's say you're doing an HDMI or DSP upgrade. We will not void your warranty for doing the upgrade unless we tell, like, oh, you spilled your old fashioned in the unit. Like, if you spilled a drink in the unit, that voids your warranty. If it comes back sticky from corn syrup, we know you spilled the drink in it.
Yeah.
But joking aside, we're not one of those people that is that picky there, but you got to ask yourself, why would you do it? Because even a DSP upgrade, which is not that expensive, if you send it to the factory, your 5-year warranty restarts. So let's say your unit had 1 year warranty left. You send your Muse in, gets a new HDMI card. For a small price compared to the original unit, it comes back to you, your 5-year warranty is now restarted. So for the next 5 years, unless it's a lightning strike, that unit's covered. Unless it's some kind of nature act of God, whatever you want to call it, that unit now has a warranty again.
Nice.
So economically, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do it yourself, because for the same cost as buying the upgrade, you can just send it in and the service is done. We fully check the unit. We hook it up. Every single input and output's tested. It goes through the same AP testing as the new unit. So when it comes back, not only is the warranty restarted, but we 100% know that unit is functioning to perfect, new spec.
I'm assuming you don't use service centers. Everything's done at one location.
Everything right now is done in Indianapolis. Now, like around the world, we have, somewhere in Europe and things like that for our global areas. But for anything in the U.S., like anything North America, we do in Indianapolis. And we do it pretty darn fast.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to promise like next day turnaround on some of these larger things, but it is pretty quick. I would say most upgrades are going to be done within a work week easily. So if it arrives to us on a Thursday, it should be shipping out before the next Thursday.
That's quick. Can't complain about that.
That's not bad. So, you're going to miss one weekend with your unit. You'll have it back. That's not too terrible.
Nope. So we're passing 2 hours. Is there anything special, anything new that you want to mention? Anything you want to get out there?
No, not in particular. I mean, like, I think we've hit a lot of high points. So if I haven't put anybody to sleep, essentially, we've talked about a lot of fun setup topics. We've talked about shows, and what we have kind of touched on, and what was important to me was you talking about your experience, because my experience is I'm always searching for that next thing.
Me too.
Now I'm doing it even with our own stuff. I'm always trying stuff. I want to see, not only can we make things better, but if somebody calls and says, hey, I had this happen, I want to try and see if I can reproduce it. I'm always pushing stuff. Sometimes I have to take a step back and just say, what's the experience like? Does it deliver that experience? And so when you shared that bit about kind of the bubble and how that got better and the smoother transition of sounds through speakers, that's what this is all about. Recreating that cinematic experience as lifelike as possible.
To me, it's what makes the hobby fun.
Right. I'm not trying to like drive sales by making an Act 5. The way I'm, getting people to try to Kool-Aid per se is just, hey, this is a wonderful sounding piece of gear. If you put it in your system, I think there's a super high likelihood you're going to not only hear a difference, but you're going to like that difference, right? It's an experience-based thing. If somebody's got a dealer near them and they can hear it, that's fun. It's a great way to check it out. But ultimately,
do you have a list on your website of dealers? Or
We do. And not only is there a list, but we've color-coded the pins, like if they're displaying dealers. Like, because in some areas you might have a guy that he's an integrator, he can get it for you. But in some areas, like, I'll give you an example. We've got a dealer in Arizona. He has everything we make. I've got a dealer in Arkansas that has everything we make. So if I get an email, some guy's like, hey, I want to hear an M4 or a pair of Iridiums, and I live in Arkansas, I know who to send them to. Mm-hmm. If they're in Arizona, I know who to send them to. If they're in New York, I know who to send them to. We've got guys that have all the stuff.
Oh, so you're talking regular people, not dealers?
No, I'm talking about dealers.
Oh, okay. So
yeah. So on our dealer locator, we indicate if they're a displaying dealer or not. So you immediately can tell, like, if you want to experience a piece of gear, that's the avenue. Now, I can't promise what that dealer offers. Some dealers are going to have it in their store. Some might offer an in-home trial. I don't know. That's up to them, what they offer. But that is the best way to get that experience and see if this product can, do cool things in your system, which I think it can, but the proof is in the pudding. You got to try it.
I still think my idea, I'm just going to put this out here to pressure a little bit. I had this cool idea. I don't know if you saw the email. I know nobody online did. I saw this portable rack. It was kind of like a carry-on luggage. Had an extendable handle, and it was like a, I don't know, 6, 8 something bay unit. Put a Muse, put an M8 in, go to somebody's house, come up with these, fairly long interconnects that you can just tap into their system and basically just unplug what you want to test, and then you've got your stuff in their room, and you can just drive around like a salesman.
Well, so I had that realization, not so much for the consumer, but for kind of winning over new dealers, because like a lot of states, I'm doing great. Like I need dealers in some states, and so I came up with this idea where I'd have a rack with the gear in it like that. SKB makes one that, like you said, like a carry-on. It's got a handle. You can tip it back on some wheels, roll around.
Yeah.
I have a panel with a bunch of female binding posts on it, and it's sort of got a snake that goes to the unit so that you can basically take all their speaker wires, just transfer them over.
Yeah.
Because I think the difference is so immediate that even before you really hone in the calibration, if you just kind of level match and get it even in the ballpark, you'll immediately experience that bubble difference, if you want to call it that, or your sound field for cinema. Now, if you do this in 2 channels, that's the easiest way to do it. I had a kind of gross analogy. I had a guy say, well, your product does sound better in 2 channels, but I think for home theater, it doesn't make that much difference. I said, I beg to differ. Because if I have 2 channels that sound better than those 2 channels, and that whole unit, let's say it's 20 channels, sounds more like poo, and I smear poo around a room, is it getting better with more poo, or is it just more poo everywhere? And the guys look at, I'm like, okay, that's a horrible analogy. But in reality, if something outperforms in 2 channel, it will outperform for theater. That is the hard truth. It will. Yeah. If it's better for 2.0, it'll be better for 9.1.6 or whatever you got.
I think people just don't realize, and I certainly didn't until, I don't know, the last couple of years, that multi-channel audio in itself can be that good and can bring out those differences.
That's true. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that would, like in Dallas, I used to demo a theater there that was quite ambitious. It was like 60,000 watts, had an Act 4. I would show this to customers and say, this is cool. And they'd say, how much does the room cost? And, I told them, I'm not going to say the price, but they're the biggest saucers, I think. But then they would hear it. And I'm not going to say that they would pony up for the whole room, but they would say, okay, this changed my mind.
Yep.
I came in today thinking I was going to spend $30,000. Now I'm thinking, maybe I'll spend this. And it's like, well, that's close to a swimming pool, but how I'll use this. I love the swimming pool example, but that's the reality. Like, I didn't know theater could do this at home. This is not only, because it's not hard to outdo what a theater does, because some theaters, the sound's not that great and the room is so big and it's for 100 plus people.
Yep.
But to get something so nuanced, people didn't really know that was possible. And so when they hear it, it's like, okay, my budget just went up threefold.
If they're lucky enough to have that up.
Yeah, because you get guys that are like, I think the whole room can be done for $10,000. That doesn't do much for the whole room. Like,
now,
you're talking.
I unfortunately had a friend go the opposite way. This was before I had the Muse. They actually bought a JBL because they loved everything here so much. And it got to the point where we're not going to use it this much to spend this much, and they put the money into other house stuff. It's like, no, you're going the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, we're audio guys, so we always think, right? I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody get a nice processor, and then they start skimping on the amps because they're going to go nuts on video. They're like, I'm getting a barcode projector, that's $100,000, so I'm only going to spend $10,000 on amps, and I'm just like, what? That's blasphemy. You can't do that. It's audio then video.
Oh.
I mean, it's even in the name. Like that dealer of mine, this guy Shane, his company, the last thing is AV, right? It's not absolute VA. It's not Veterans Affairs. It's absolute audio video. So audio first, then video, right?
I agree.
I'm not just saying that because I make audio stuff. I've always felt that way. I mean, that's why in my room, speakers are in that audiophile experience, and then the screen is what I can fit there. The guys that go wall to wall with the screen, now the speakers either have to go behind it or wherever. It's like, no, I got my triangle set up. This 120 fits. It's still a good video presentation, but
you still have fun watching movies.
Yeah, it's still crazy fun.
Yeah.
It's big enough to feel immersive, but it's about, for me, the 2-channel performance was not something I was willing to let go.
I agree. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up tonight.
Okay, cool, man. I enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you very much for joining me. Tell everyone the websites real quick.
Okay, so if you want to check out any product, ACURUSAV.com or ARAGONAV.com. That will take you to either one of our brands.
And stay tuned, guys. I've got a lot more stuff coming up. I'm actually in the middle of a project right now on how to find your best tow-in for free, and I'm going to have detailed songs and things to listen to and all that you can follow along and go through yourself at home. And Rick, I'm definitely going to have you on for another show in the near future because there's a ton of other stuff that we're going to talk about then.
Awesome.
All right.
I can't wait to talk about group delay and speaker designs and every other fun thing.
Hell yeah.
All right. Appreciate it.
See ya.